Hi and hello watch fans, and welcome to another edition of The Real Time Show with me, your friendly neighbourhood watchmaker Rob Nuds, our friendly neighbourhood jeweller Alon Ben Joseph, and renowned collector, watch lover, industry commentator Justin Hast. It's a pleasure to have you in the studio.
Rob, good morning to you, Sir Alan. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for having me on. Very, very kind.
Obviously, we always wanted to get you on the show to talk to you about the many operations you have going in the industry, but specifically today we are going to be talking eventually, after we've deep dived into your background, about an upcoming event that you are instrumental in organising. But Justin, let's start from the very beginning. For any of our listeners who possibly have managed to avoid your name thus far in their watchmaking journey, could you tell us who you are, where you came from, and how you got into watchmaking?
It sounds like, do you remember Blind Date, that show?
Yeah.
Cilla Black. Can you tell us a little bit about where you come from, Justin? Date number 3. Guys, no, listen, I apologise if you've seen the face and the mug and the voice, and I can only apologise. Ultimately, Rob, I am just nothing more than a watch lover. I'm one of those guys that got given a watch for their 21st birthday and sort of has never left it alone and never left the watch world alone. I got given an Omega Constellation, a 1968, I think, Omega Constellation from my dad for my 21st birthday. And he got it from his dad, but I never met my grandparents and he didn't know where the hell it came from. So he just said, he might as well have this. And then I sort of got into watches as a result of just a great experience with that watch. And it was at the time when the internet was all about forums, and I was on the forums. I was on the IWC forum. I remember being one of the most seminal ones that I loved, and it just sort of carried me away from there. I originally was born in South Africa, but I live in London now, and neither of my parents, no one in the family has ever been in watches of any kind, or jewelry or anything. So it was very much from within. And I started writing. I started a blog, which was about watches, but it was about craftsmanship and other things. And then I started writing it for magazines as they were slowly coming through. So Revolution and Monochrome and Hodinkee at one point or another as well. So I just feel very lucky. It's been an organic thing. It's not an easy one to explain to friends or girls on dates either. As to what I do, taking photos of watches and talking about them every day is not the easiest one to explain. It certainly didn't convert for me. Unfortunately, my wife still doesn't think I've got a real job, but nonetheless, that's the story. Sorry, Rob, long-winded answer.
No, not at all. We love long-winded answers. It makes our life very easy. Did you ever get accused of being a spy on dates? Because that happens to me quite frequently, or has done in the past. Whenever I introduce myself to people, they say, that's not a real job. Robots make watches, you lying super spy.
I haven't actually, no. Not a spy. But I did date a girl once at school who's lovely, lovely, lovely girl, Ginny. Her dad, I was absolutely sure was a spy. I dated her and my best friend dated her sister. And at one point he found 17 different passports in the dad's drawer. Don't ask me how he ended up in the dad's drawer, but we're pretty sure he was a spy. But I have not been accused of one. I've been accused of a lot of things, but not a spy.
Well, I'm going to accuse you of something here. I'm going to accuse you of not just being a watch lover. You are incredibly active and incredibly present in the media space. I mean, you are the man behind the Watch Annual. And you've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 editions already, and I guess 6 is coming out this year. Tell us about that and how you started, why you thought it was a good idea to undertake such a massive project.
I've always loved print, so as well as collecting watches, I collect books and magazines. I don't collect anything else really, but books, magazines, and watches. I just love the feeling of magazines in the hand. I love flicking through a magazine on a Sunday afternoon and find it inspiring. And I also love the idea of collaboration. I just think the watch industry is good at it. From a product perspective, we've seen a lot of collaboration over the years. But I just love working with other people. And so this project came about in lockdown, actually. It was just the start. We were planning it, my friend James Allen and I, who runs a creative agency in London called Birch. And we were planning actually to do a city guide. We wanted to create like a monocle city guide for watches. And we quickly realized that the world was shutting down. It wasn't going to be the year for a city guide. And so we sort of pivoted and I said, well, there's a great book out there called the Wristwatch Annual, which does showcase all of the new watches of the year. And it's a great reference for people to look back on the years of design and complication and brand innovation. But actually what it lacks and what it misses is it misses that personal touch. It misses the community aspect. It misses the commentary from people and the insights from people. So we sort of said, couldn't there be a user-generated book every year from the community? I guess it was also sort of peak Instagram for us, where everyone was really into posting photos on Instagram and sharing their stories and photos. And it was lovely to see lots of different types of photography coming through. So ultimately, we crowdsourced it. I think in that first year, we had 40 different contributors from around the world. Then we had sort of 60, then 80, then 100. And we sort of capped it there. And we got 100 watches, 100-ish contributors, plus minus. And, it just went from there. It was something I was new to. Printing anything was new for me. So I had to lean on talking about collaboration. Not only were the people very generous out there from the community who contributed images and edit, but also James, thankfully, is very, very good at when it comes to print products and printing things, which is a very difficult challenge in itself. And we won't even touch on the logistics of actually getting books out there to the world. But it was just lovely to work with lots of different people out there and get people's take and also to celebrate their skills. Nothing made me happier than seeing, people around the world sharing the books and saying how nice it was to see their print, their photography and their writing in print.
And recently you've started a podcast as well. Please tell us more about that, Justin.
Geez, Alan, here we go. So we're talking about big shifts and big things going on in the watch world. And, I feel like the media world is continually evolving. And the one thing that's been impossible to ignore from my side, at least, has been Substack. And this idea that we are, on the media side, we are submissive and reliant on brands. And don't get me wrong, I'm fortunately in a position where I work with brands that I really love. And I know you guys are as well. We're very passionate about the independent brands, particularly that we work with. But it's also challenging because you want to be able to write things that are sometimes objective, sometimes things that are not positive. And so purely from a media perspective, Substack has become really interesting because, of course, you're asking the community to support you in your writing and in your podcasting and in your video, whatever it may be. And Chris Hall, a good friend of mine, he launched the Fourth Wheel, which was the first one here in the UK anyway. And then Johnny Davis and has launched his and Tony Trainer, of course, with Unpolished. And so there's been a few that came before this, but Stephen and I, the ex-editor-in-chief there at Hodinkee from a few years back, he was the first guy to commission me at Hodinkee. I got on really well with him. And we've always felt we worked well together. I guess when I say that, I mean, he's incredibly efficient. He does a great job. I just get pulled along. And he's also he's got a different view on watches to me. He's obviously in the States and I'm in the UK. The special relationship, as we say, or we did say before this administration, in the US, we can't get political, can we? We don't want to get political. But look, it's just been an amazing journey. We've done it for a few months now. People have been really, really responsive to it. It's allowed us to support, the production of this podcast and production of this newsletter, and to go out and bring hopefully exciting guests and articles and stories that are just a little bit different. Maybe the stories that you sort of would have read from Hodinkee and others over the years that were non-commercial in that sense. So, Stephen wrote a story recently which people sort of really got behind, which was the journey that he's on as to whether he should sell his Explorer, his Rolex Explorer that so many people associate with him. And it's not a story that would necessarily be commissioned by our colleagues out there who are producing big magazines because, well, it's just not a commercial story, but it's a really interesting one. So we want to speak to collectors, and we're primarily in the business of speaking to collectors on journeys like us who buy lots of watches and want to buy watches and want to sell watches and want to find their own place collecting wise. That's kind of it, Ellen.
Listeners of the Real Time Show know my stance on the term influencer. I'm very curious what you think and feel when you hear the term influencer, and does it apply to you?
Well, I've been desperate to get my arse out on more photos, but I've been told that it's just not a great sell. I've been desperately trying to do that. The reality is, for a lot of people out there, I think because we're so deep in the trenches, we're in the watch world. Our feeds inevitably will be mainly watches. We can talk about what's on your feed, Alon, later. It might not just be watches. It's just that you need to be an expert. For me, you've got to be it's not about the word influencer. It's about being an expert in your field, whatever that is. The word influencer, I think, has been hijacked, and ultimately is sort of useless in many ways. I certainly view myself, and I'm constantly thinking to myself, how can you be more of that authority? How can you be more of that expert, someone who knows what they're talking about, someone who really has a passion, interest in a very specific subject? if you're publishing something, that could be a photo, it could be a video or something on Instagram, it could be on YouTube, it could be on Substack or wherever it might be. Are you actually educating? Are you inspiring? Are you driving action? And are you that authority, with genuine knowledge and insight? And I think the other word I would throw in there is context. And this is something that only comes through years and years of graft. I remember Tracy Llewellyn, who works at the Telegraph now. She's actually back at Revolution. She's a colleague of mine. She was my boss for a few years when I was at Revolution. And, that was a word that we talked about a lot because she had the experience in the issue. So she could, and this is when I first came into Watches, when I was an online editor at Revolution. I couldn't really provide context. I could rewrite a press release, but actually I didn't know Watches well enough. And that wasn't my fault, I don't think. It was just I had not spent enough time with Watches. Over the years, you start to build context, which is to say, you meet the people who make these things, you meet the designers, and you handle a lot of the watches. And you understand that, okay, this stamp dial, the stamp gear dial, is different to a traditionally done gear dial. And when we talk about finishing on a movement, what is an internal angle and what does it take to produce that? I just feel like it takes context. So that's a long answer, Alon, to your question. I'm not inundated. I'm not particularly passionate about the word influencer either. But I guess that's probably where I'm at. Where are you? Just remind me, because I haven't been privileged enough to understand where you're at, along with your influence. I can imagine where you are. Tell me more.
I hate the term because influencing, it has a negative connotation. Obviously, marketing is just that, but we are definitely on the same wavelength and frequency because Rob and I started this podcast, and the Real Time Show is independent. It's non-commercial. We don't sell anything, and we love our independence. We're here to share the passion and knowledge about watchmaking. So I guess we are exactly at the same spot. Why I addressed this question is when the first time I've encountered the brand Justin Hast, the enigma, the force, was not only the big smile, because you ooze passion and fun, which I love. You seem very down to earth, whereas I think your focus and your passion lies in horlogerie, so the finer things in watchmaking. But you don't do this in a flexing way. It's all about the art of watchmaking, or the French love to say the métier d'art. But why I've raised it, it's difficult to box you in, whereas many people have issues boxing Rob and I separately and together in one box because we do so much. So that was the reason of my question. I want to use this as a segue, if I may. I wanted you on the show as well for a long time, as Rob said at the introduction, but we literally twisted your arm to come on the show today. And we're going to put out this episode as quick as possible because one of my favorite cities in the world is London, where you are at. And you guys, together with two co-founders, are going to host the London Watch Week. And I was blown away because I love the idea. There's a lot of horological happenings in London. London is picking up, and I'm very happy about that. Please tell us more about why you guys have started this. I won't call it a fair, but a platform for everything watchmaking in London.
Yeah, geez, Alon, a fair would be a stretch too far. So this is our first year, and I was saying to Rob before we started recording that this is my first sort of foray into events as such. And it's a big undertaking. I've been fortunate enough over the years to host a lot of events. I love hosting events with brands from Vacheron to Piaget to IWC in their boutiques, talking to collectors, having a really objective conversation. But I've never done something like this. I've never tried to organize it myself. I've invited guests, but I've never tried to do something like this. Lucy Cheesewright is one of my co-founders. Tom Exton, TGE Online, is the other co-founder. So there's three of us in total. And Lucy got in touch with us probably a year ago and said, I just feel like there's an opportunity in London. London is, as you say, a fundamental watch destination. We have some of the great retailers. We've got some of the great big brands present, of course. We've got great history here. And we've got a lot of watch lovers who are based here. And of course, a lot of people who travel to London as well. So she sort of said, hey, there's an opportunity here. And she was behind QP many, many years ago. You probably came when it was at the Saatchi Gallery. And she was really quite disruptive in the way she brought that to the table, because she brought together brands that would never have normally been together in a beautiful location and had a great party at the same time. And I can remember it was pretty seminal in my discovery of a number of brands. I mean, I can remember vividly Rexep sitting there by himself on a table, like a seated table, like a bar stool by himself, with this little a bit of merchandising behind him for Akrivia, and no one was speaking to him. You know, Roger Smith was on the other side of the room being sort of chatted to by everybody, but Rexep was sitting there, no one was speaking to him, and it was just one of those crazy moments. And then you've got Bremont next to him, and it's like we wouldn't see that today. So Lucy was like, could we do something again? Could we find a way to create something a little bit different? And I said to her, I'd love to be involved. I'd love to help if I'm able to. But the way I see it is that we've got to look to others. And I think we've been led by Dubai Watch Week. We've been led by Milan Watch Week. They've done amazing jobs. Okay, they've been driven by retailers specifically in those areas. We are not a retailer. You know, we are absolutely nothing in comparison. We are a bunch of rogues coming together who love watches, who think we can do something. And the idea is, could we decentralize it? I don't think, my suggestion to Lucy immediately was, I don't think brands are ever going to leave the bricks and mortar they've invested so much in. Alon, you know this better than anyone. You know, these bigger brands, these big group brands now, for example, are not going to leave. And that's fair because they've invested a lot of money in that. They want people to come to them. So could we take the party to them? That was the idea across the whole week. Could it work after Watches Wonders? Could it be something that people would buy into? So we just started exploring it. And, you know, thankfully, a few people have come out the woodwork and supported us. Now, it's got a couple of facets, as well as being decentralized to it, that I think make it different. We also want to support independents. We also want to support dealers. Dealers have had a horrible run of it over many years. We know that because they were frowned upon. And then, of course, now we've seen acquisitions taking place across the industry. And suddenly, you know, Watchfinder is not what people thought it was many years ago, the likes of Hodinkee, the likes of Analog Shift and others. And so we wanted dealers involved, but we wanted the best. We wanted those that we bought from and we sold from. We wanted an event that we could go to ourselves, that we wanted to go to ourselves. So we've ended up in a situation where across a week, we've got lots of different things going on. And I have to confess, you know, without Lucy's knowledge, and again, this was something Rob and I talked about before we started filming, without Lucy's support, her knowledge, her expertise in the logistics of organizing an event, it would not be possible. It's happening in a few days' time, and we've got some amazing locations, some amazing partners, and we've got, you know, over 1,000 people who've subscribed to the tickets online that want to come and see things, thankfully. So, for example, we kick off with an evening at Bonhams on Tuesday, the 17th of June. We've got talks going on between myself and Tom Chamberlain, the editor of The Rate magazine, with the head of watches, Jonathan Darracott at Bonhams. And Bonhams have been on an interesting journey in the last few years because they've acquired a French, a Parisian auction house. They've acquired Brød Rasmussen, an auction house in Denmark that I used to work for. They've acquired a Swedish one as well. So they're in a really interesting place. We're going to do some talks at Bonhams. Then they've got a big gala thing there with the Rake celebrating 100th edition anniversary. And it's all about collaboration. So that's our first day on Tuesday. Then on Thursday, we've got a gala reception with Zenith. Alongside, that's an evening, alongside an Independence Day, which is taking place on Curzon Street, just next to the Saudi embassy in town. Really lovely traditional building, beautiful big windows, great light, great coffee that will be served. And we've got the likes of Fam El Hut, to my knowledge, have never been in London before, have never exhibited before. Laurent Ferré, one of my absolute favorite brands. Chapek, Ludwig Bellois, Anderson Geneva are launching a new watch for their anniversary year. Ressence, Pragma, another brand who I don't believe have been in London before. So high-end Atelier Wen, Perle, and Mara Mousse. So we've got a really nice mix of independents that some of whom have doors in London, some of whom don't, but really an opportunity to see them all together at the same time. And a lot of their leadership are coming over as well, which is super cool. We then on Thursday also got a Pragnell event. Pragnell do retail the likes of Ferdinand Berthoud and Grubel Forsey and Laurent Ferrier. So we're again opening doors and bringing people in a different way. So there's going to be a pop-up there. They've got an amazing vault down there, which is this insane thing that people who come along to that will be able to enjoy. Friday, we've got an event with Oris. They're launching a watch, a special edition watch at the event, which is super cool. We've got my friend Chris Hall doing a talk there with the CEO and the dial artist. And then in the evening on Friday as well, we're simultaneously on Savile Row at Drake's, one of my favorite clothing stores. And we're popping up with a few of my favorite dealers. We've got Somlo, Maunder, Watch Brothers London, and Subdial, who are going to be exhibiting some of their bits and pieces at Drake's. So for me, that encapsulates what we believe this event could be in the future, which is bringing together different audiences in different environments, cross-pollinating vintage watches, new watches, independent watches in environments that you wouldn't normally see them. And then Saturday we've got back to Curzon Street, and we've got the additions of Tortoise Watches, Watches Knightsbridge, and Watch Collecting, the auction site, all joining those dealers for a whole day on Saturday at Curzon Street. So, geez, boy, that's the long-winded answer there. But yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted there, Lon, the event stuff. It really isn't. The logistics, the organization, the small details of things is just bonkers. Security, insurance, transfers. Yeah, there we are, guys. That's sort of that's it in a nutshell, if you will.
You got me fired up. While listening to you, I immediately registered for a ticket on LondonWatchWeekOfficial.com. So everyone listening and wants to attend, tickets are free.
Yes.
Help me out here, Justin, what they need to do on the website. Do they register for individual events for the whole week? How does it work?
Yeah, so that's one of the things we've been working through is by nature it's a little bit more convoluted. It's not just coming down for a Saturday, but you go to the website, you go into the ticket section, sign up for the tickets front and center, add to cart, get it done, and then what will happen is one of the team will send you a follow-up email with options to then reserve different moments across the week. And some of those moments actually have been already fully booked. So, for example, the Friday night at Drake's on Savile Row, because of the capacity of the environment, we are fully booked there. There are some private events which won't be featured, but you will get a prompt with a lot of different options for different moments across the week. And we really look forward to seeing everyone. I mean, it goes without saying that one of the great things about events, we live in a digital world, and I speak to a lot of collectors out there every day on DMs on Instagram, but actually getting together in person, nothing beats that. Nothing beats discussing a case or whatever it might be in person, getting fired up together, as geeky as that might be.
So we talked about a lot of the brands that will be attending the event, and there are some incredible names there. But let's just talk about your favorite brands, the brands that you have enjoyed wearing, enjoyed getting to know, the histories that appeal to you, because your journey started with that Omega way back when, and you have had almost unfettered access, I guess, to some of the highest levels of horology ever since. And so after years of experience, which brands have left the greatest impression on you?
That's really interesting, Rob. Yeah, I guess I am quite loyal to a few brands. I mean, I'm sort of falling back to my position now, the way that I explain this to my wife, like when she's like, "Oh, no, not another one," or she'll butcher me for something that's come in that I'm loving. I'll say, "Check this out," and she'll be like, "No, it's disgraceful." But thankfully, these brands, and I'm saying, the likes of Laurent Ferrier, the likes of Lange, the likes of Vacheron, the likes of IWC. I'm a little bit more, I would say I'm a bit more classical. I like, I'm immediately drawn to dress watches. I think I'm immediately drawn to brands that have a design language that is different, that has its own identity. And I guess I'm also trapped a little bit in this idea of old school romance and sort of old school elegance. I had a sort of a mentor. He was a family friend, an uncle of mine that I used to help growing up. He was a designer, interior designer actually, and he was always about sort of elegance and looking at colors and looking at balance and design. And I sort of was very lucky to be around him, and I took a lot from that. And so naturally, watches like the 1921 from Vacheron, like the Lange one, like the Sport Auto from Laurent Ferrier, or the classic from the classic case, watch round case, the Galet from Laurent Ferrier. Those types of things speak to me. My first love was the Portuguese, the IWC Portuguese chronograph, and so that's kind of where I'm at. But I do find myself actually, Rob, loving maybe just a few brands. I'm not a huge Rolex guy. My Rolex knowledge is very poor. I'm just naturally not drawn to Rolex. I'm naturally not drawn to Patek either, strangely, which is, sacrilege, and I'm sure I'll get butchered in the comments for that. The same with the Omega Speedmaster. It's, and I love this about watches, is we can get together, and I really hope one of you guys is a huge Omega Speedmaster collector, because that's super cool. I just, for some reason, it just has never spoken to me. But yet Renaissance speaks to me, really bizarre, really strange, unlike anything else, but I just find it really interesting. So that's where I'm at. What have I picked up recently? Romain Gaultier, I think, is really, really interesting. It's the C from Romain Gaultier. I'm absolutely hooked on the architecture that he finds interesting and the finishing. But I've also fallen in love more than just with names and brands. I've fallen in love with wearability recently. I'm really obsessed with wearability.
That's an interesting thing for you to say to me, because I'm obsessed with trying to figure out the science behind wearability and visual impact and all these other strange esoteric things that nobody else gives that much of a damn about. But when you get deep into the passion, as we are, they start to become the most important thing. Tell me, do you think there's a consistent thread between the brands that you've fallen in love with in terms of aesthetics or technical prowess or history, or is it just really a perfect storm that appeals to you when something just works because of itself? What is it that you find most attractive?
I think the watch has to say something about you, right? So you need to see a synergy within that product that you connect with, and it might be because it's an oddball, it might be because it's ostentatious, it's over the top, it's understated. I mean, I love Laurent Ferré for its design codes. He has an eye, I think, Laurent Ferré, for design that no one else has in the watch world, which is an understatement and a delicateness to his designs that I have yet to encounter from anyone else.
Going back to the London Watch Week, you've got a great portfolio of brands presenting already, but which brands, give me, say, 3 names, would you like to add to this next year that you feel would elevate it, or at least take it in the right direction, if elevate is the wrong word?
I should start by saying thank you to all the brands, any of them who might be listening. Thank you for taking a chance on us. Thanks for taking a risk, because there's no two ways about it. Year one, it absolutely is a risk. Particularly Zenith, because Zenith on this big anniversary, 160th anniversary year, they've decided to come on board. And we are determined to over deliver for each and every one of the brands that have done that. We were very close, and they were very, very respectful to us, and they were very diligent. And I think they're doing some of the most incredible work in the world right now, watch-wise, is Chopard. I love it will come as no surprise, having listed the brands I've just listed, that the LUC speaks to me a lot. The watches they launched this year at Watches and Wonders were absolutely incredible. I'd love to have a breakfast. I'm calling Chopard out. I'm using this moment, boys, to call out Chopard. And I'm saying, guys, if you're listening, next year, we need you to have a breakfast at your boutique, because to me, that would be the height of a step forward and you know, elevating it to the next level. The elegance that would come, the moment, it would just be a joy to be at their spot with some LUC watches.
I mean, this is the moment. Use the platform for this. Perfect use of the real-time show. Chopard, we need your breakfast.
We need your
breakfast. To do lunch. Who's going to do dinner?
Justin is going Hollywood. No Tiffany's at breakfast at Tiffany's, but it's breakfast at Chopard by Justin Hast.
Can you imagine? Well, you know, Tiffany seems to be making some moves in the watch world now, and there's a bit of investment going in over there. So it would be, I'm calling out the Arnauds. I'm calling out Tiffany now. Let's have a breakfast at Tiffany's. Chopard, step aside. No. Guys, I'd be happy to have anything at Tiffany. I'd be happy to have anything at Chopard. There are so many brands out there I admire, but particularly Chopard at the moment. I just feel that would be a really lovely addition to the show and for the week. And, you know, we've got people coming in from overseas. We've got collectors coming in from Paris, and we've got collectors coming from the Netherlands actually as well. So I feel like one day, you know, I'd love to just be a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of what Dubai Watch Week's achieved in its ability to pull people, because I'm going out to Dubai Watch Week later this year. I believe Dubai Watch Week might well be as interesting as Watches and Wonders moving forward when it comes to novelties. I believe most brands showing there are going to show something fresh, and that, you know, that shows the commitment they have to that show and to what we have moving forward. I actually fundamentally believe there'll be, I think there's going to be a watch week in every major city. I think in the future we'll see a watch week in every major city, because we need to drill down further. It can't just be one big show across the year. I think we need to drill down further into each and every market. Big call, I know.
I think there's probably scope for it, and I think that's exactly what we need to get these watches into the hands of people that are so used to seeing them through the screen but not in person, because it makes all the difference. Like you said, when it comes to wearability, who's to know what a watch really feels like until you get it on your wrist? So I do think that's the future, and I think that you're certainly doing your bit by pushing ahead with London Watch Week. Now, you mentioned that you obviously had the assistance of Lucy and other team members propelling this to fruition, but what were the strangest things that you learned as somebody that has never really organized an event on this scale before? Things that you never imagined you'd have to consider in terms of, I don't know, you mentioned security before, but things like that, things that only you would know.
Yeah. I mean, it's not entirely strange, is it really? It's, but you know, understandably, people want to know where they are in a room and who they're next to. You know, it's a classic watch world thing. I mean, if you go into any big retail environment, you know, which brand is next to which brand, that is, you know, for people outside of the industry, that's always something to note and is interesting. So you see that at the big trade shows for sure. I think, do you know what? This is the strangest thing. This is the strangest thing, Rob. Zenith, of course, is part of LVMH. One thing I didn't appreciate, and I don't think any of us in the team appreciated, but of course makes sense, is the expense involved in LVMH champagne. So we are going to have Moet being served at the Zenith evening at Minotti, by the way. I should have said Minotti, a furniture company, high-end Italian furniture company. And we're going to be serving Moet. Now, please don't drink too much because we are paying for the Moet at a very, very reasonable price, kindly from the people from LVMH. But to think that everything in the LVMH world is connected. And so it wasn't something that we foresaw, was that, of course, we would be serving an LVMH branded champagne at the reception. But it's those types of little things that you don't quite appreciate until you get into the nitty gritty of it. And of course, it will be wonderful when it hits the lips for anyone who comes along.
Funny, usually when I do LVMH events, I serve Clicquot.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
Orange label, right? So we're Dutchies.
Of course.
It was just a little inside joke. What other bottlenecks did you guys encounter organizing this? Just it's very interesting, this insights you're sharing.
I mean, look, I think, fundamentally, we just knew year one, like anything, it's going to take some convincing to get brands to buy in. Alan, from a retail sort of background, the challenges that go on there. And these brands are understandably very sensitive. Some of them have been around for hundreds of years. And so they want to maintain that, and they want to be very delicate and considered in that. For example, the Curzon Street location is absolutely stunning. When you go into it, it is traditional. It's got a frontage. You walk in through the main door on the street. You go up to the first floor. It's traditional, British architecture, huge staircase, beautiful cornicing, and big room, big volume in the room. But the photos never did it justice. So all we had to send a brand to say, by the way, these independent brands on the Thursday when they're going to be in there, we didn't have the best way to exhibit what that room would actually look like in reality. And we did have one brand that just said, hey, we're not absolutely sure on the environment. And we were urging them to maybe come over and have a look, because in truth, it's so much better in person than it is in the photos.
What struck me as not odd but interesting is that there is no British brand affiliated with the week yet.
That, Alan, is a very good point. I don't have an answer for that specifically, apart from the fact that I think we've just been scrambling and there'll be a lot of entrepreneurs out there and a lot of founders of different types of businesses out there that will recognize that, I love this phase of anything, which is just complete carnage. We're flying around, you're trying to, there's WhatsApp messages coming in, there's pictures coming in here, and then there's messages on the emails, there's DMs, you're trying to organize so much. So I think in many ways, we've probably taken our eye off the ball as far as engaging specifically with local partners. I mean, I get on really, really well with Fears, with Studio Underdog. I think the answer to that, this is actually the answer. So we took we took our eye off the ball to some extent. We've also got our friends at Oracle Time who are organizing an event this weekend. And I want to make this very clear that they are organizing a tremendous event that's going on this Saturday. And they are going to have the likes of Christopher Ward and others, and a lot of smaller brands who are British are going to be there. And what we didn't want to do was, and by the way, we had no idea that the guys were setting that up. I've written for them over the years, really like them. And so we didn't want to double up. There was no reason for us to then have the brands that are exhibiting there exhibit with us a few days later. So we wanted to make it a distinct difference in experience for people. And then actually our friends at Time and Tide, who opened up in London recently, they've got an event on the Thursday night, with Brawn Pan. So we just wanted to make sure that we weren't crossing swords, for lack of a better term, with anybody else. But I would love to have, some British brands represented next year, and we just have to see how the show continues to evolve. By definition, as you touched on earlier, Rob, my interest is in a particular segment of the industry, which tends to be, unfortunately for my bank account, the higher end of the segment, and so therefore I think our opportunity is to continue to focus on that, which is the higher end of the market.
You just gave a perfect intro to my follow-up question, which is, have you turned down brands? Meaning, do you have a ballotage of a minimum of price level, quality level, brand level, prestige that London Watch Week gives a platform to?
No, is the answer. But we were very conscious in who we went out to. So we did have a strategy. Although I say it's carnage, and it has been, we definitely had a view for how the format should work, how the format should work. and the brands that we wanted to go out to. And so in that sense, we had a strategy, and we haven't said no to anyone in particular. I say that that's probably true. There was one conversation which was happening which didn't feel quite right. Two conversations, which one dealer and one brand that didn't feel quite right. And we didn't say no, but we just didn't end up completely pursuing it. I sound like that guy's trying to break up. You know, when someone tries to break up with you and they're like, it's not you, it's me, and I really want you to be happy one day. It was kind of that breakup moment with one dealer, one brand. It was sort of ambiguous, and it was very positive, if I could say that.
I think you answered that question superbly, to be honest, because it's a tough one to be asked, because, you don't want to put barriers up too harshly, but realistically, if you're going to have a brand like Laurent Ferrier there or Chapek there, Ludovic Bauer, there's got to be like a point where it's like, okay, well, Steinhardt can't be here. It just sort of clashes. It just doesn't make any sense. And I don't think they should be offended by that statement as well. They may love to stand next to Laurent Ferrier, but it's an absolute joke if they did, because they're not on the same page. So there does have to be a bracket. And the fact that you were just distinct in who you approached, and then worked on the dynamic between you and the brands to figure out whether or not it was going to be a fit, because the last thing you need when you're trying to get something off the ground with many brands and many egos in the mix is the problem brand that's going to kick off about everything, that's going to demand things of you when you can't possibly cede to those demands when you have other brands to take care of as well. So nice way to do it, I think, and well answered. I have a question which will take us in many directions, I'm sure, and it may be the last question depending on how long your answer is, and it can be as long as you want because we've got time. You probably haven't got time because you've got to go organize an event in one of the busiest capital cities in the world, but we're all right. My question is, after all these years in watchmaking, having had so much experience in the metal with these pieces, is there any desire on your side to start your own brand? And if you did, what would you like to see from it?
The answer, Rob, is no. The answer is no, because I am fulfilled with what is out there. I'm fulfilled with what's out there already, both in terms of new watches that have been released in recent times, but also this incredible inventory of watches that exist out there in the world. I love diving into the rabbit holes and into the darker corners of the collecting world. I've got a watch on right now that probably speaks to that, which is this Ralph Lauren, the Slim Classique that Piaget made the movement for, and is just stunning. And so for me, I'm fulfilled with what's out there, and both in terms of my design desires and my technical desires, and I guess you could probably call sort of historical desires as well. I'm excited about what's to come. I just personally don't feel that I need to be contributing a brand to that. I also feel that it's very hard work to start with. That doesn't put me off, but it's also very, very hard work. And it's no surprise that we have brands in the watch world. We are blessed to have brands that are over 100 years old, over 150 years old, over 200 years old, 260 years old. And that is something quite special. I'm not saying that innovation can't be found, because of course we see that with the likes of Debethune and MB&F and Urwerk and Renaissance and others. And more recently we're seeing, I would say, innovation from a finishing perspective, from an artisanal perspective, with the likes of Simon Brett and Berneron and others. But there are just, sometimes you've just got to recognize your own skill set, and you've got to recognize what you can bring to the table. I feel like I can bring an energy and a passion to what people are doing. When I see something I like, I feel I'm best positioned, like anyone in a football team or a rugby team. If you weigh 130 kgs, I love rugby, but this could apply to any sport. But if you weigh 130 kgs and you love smashing into people, you need to play in the front row. If you're very, very quick and you're a ball player, you should be playing in the back line. So for me, my best position is actually not to be building a brand necessarily. But my best position, I think, is to be getting people excited about what brands are doing. And so that's probably where I'm at. Now, that doesn't completely tell the whole story, because I wouldn't be against being part of designing something from a brand that I love, being part of that, being in addition to that, which I haven't had the pleasure of doing yet from a watch perspective, but I've done a few other product collaborations over the years. But I wouldn't be against doing that, just to talk to what we've said already about things like wearability. The best example I can think of right now is this Laurent Ferrier, this Sport Auto in titanium that I love wearing. I can't take it off. And I'm curious, as you are, as to why I can't take that off. Why is that a watch that I keep coming back to? Why do people keep coming back to Rolex every day? Why is Rolex so wearable? That's really interesting to me. So I wouldn't be against contributing to a broader team, but again, it plays into this story of mine that's probably a narrative of collaboration. I'm okay to collaborate with people. I don't have a desire to build my own brand as such. There we go. I hope that answers the question, Rob Boy.
It does very much so. Elegant answer, as elegant as you are. It begs the question, because you put it very eloquently, that the market you're very pleased with. I will reverse the question. Are there too many brands, dear Justin? And do you think we'll see less brands in the coming years?
No doubt. No doubt. We have gone back now to a collector's market. I'm grateful for it, but it means that there are more watches available. There's more interesting watches available. Prices. I'm talking about the secondary market, particularly here. When you look at them, you think, okay, that's a bit more reasonable. The challenge, of course, is that we're seeing the opposite from the primary side. We're seeing watches at retail now starting to become quite intimidating. Not open for everybody to be involved in. Scary numbers. We can see that with the Urban Jurgensen launch recently, for example. Not suggesting that there isn't value there, but it's a big number. It's right. It's for a particular part of the market. It's not for everyone, but it's a big number. We're talking big numbers. I think we've got too many watches, generally speaking, out there, Alon. I'm worried. I get worried about the number of new watches coming out. I think we've got too many coming out. I think there are too many watches out there in the market right now, and that's softening the industry a little bit. We remember back to 2008 when brands had to buy back and get rid of watches just to maintain the equity in the brand, because we know how important that is in the watch world, is people feeling like they can walk into a Jaeger-LeCoultre or a Vacheron or a Panerai and feel like this is, or a Tag or a Zenith, and feel like this is an elevated experience. And I think we will lose some. Rob and I were talking about his work, and he works with a lot of small independents. There needs to be a reason for them to exist. They need to have a story that gives them a reason to exist. Now, that might be in the design, that might be in the technical, it might be in the founder's story. But I fear that we are seeing too many coming in. And I get the press releases, I get the press releases coming through from the media side, and I'm looking up thinking, okay, well, what is this? I'm looking at the watch. I'll always say thank you. I'll always email the PR team back and say, thank you for sending me this. But I can't make any commitment here to covering it, because there's nothing here that really speaks to me. So yes is the answer. We have got too many brands, and I think we will lose some. The big brands are realigning themselves and they're finding a new way forward. And if that's happening with the big brands, then it's definitely going to be happening with the smaller brands. It's very hard to keep people engaged. It's very hard to continue to tell stories. And so I think, this year and into next year, we will see fewer brands surviving, unfortunately. But actually, I think the further you get down the line with watches, you become more and more demanding of what a brand is delivering to you. You need value, and you need design, and you need something different. You just need something different.
Immediately, don't you, when you reach out to a new brand and you ask, like, why does this watch exist? And then when they take a deep breath, you're like, okay, this is a watch that shouldn't exist. It should be very simple. It should be straightforward. When it's a story about like a rock your grandfather found on a particular beach, on a blustery day in March in 1876, and the color of the rock inspired him, you're like, okay, this is horseshit. Like, there's nothing here. You've got no reason to exist.
But if you think back to, I had a really great experience with Benoit from Restaurants years and years ago when he first launched the brand, and they're a pretty extreme version, because of course you can tell immediately it's different to anything else. But he said, I just can't believe we have to teach children how to read time. It doesn't make sense to me. We should make something more intuitive. And so that's why the dial is such, a rotating dial where the hands don't cross. And you have this immediate readout. We know what hour we're in generally, but we don't know what minute. So we want a very clear minute readout, not a very clear hour readout. So we could argue about that all day long, whether that's true or not. But ultimately, there's a reason. He's got a mission to fight for. There's a mission there that he is delivering, and he's continued to deliver that till today. So I'm with you entirely, Rob.
I think that's a brilliant example of a brand that's done things differently and communicated those differences very effectively. And what a wonderful coup that they will be at the very first London Watch Week. Official.com. There you go. That's the website. If you want to go check it out, go to londonwatchweekofficial.com and you can go and see the brands that are going to be presenting there. You can get yourself some tickets, and you will have, I'm sure, a wonderful time rolling around England's capital and sampling some of the finest horology the world has to offer, and maybe even meeting Justin Hast in person. Is that a possibility, Justin?
I'm afraid so. That is a byproduct. That is a byproduct of this event. I will be there almost entirely.
Well, that's a recreational hazard that you'll have to deal with, I guess. Justin, thank you for your time. We really appreciate you popping in to talk to us, despite the oncoming event and all of the jobs that you've got to take care of before it all kicks off. It was a great pleasure. If any of our audience have any questions for Justin or would like him back on the show, which I'm sure they will, then please get in touch with us via the usual channels. You can contact Alon or I via our email addresses, either Rob or Alon at therealtime.show, via the official website, www.therealtime.show, or via the dedicated Instagram handle at therealtime.show. You can contact our other hosts, David and Scarlett, via their Instagram handles, either at DAVAUCHER for David, or at SCARLINTHESHIRE, Scarl in the Shire for Scarlett. We'll be back soon with more top quality watch content and interviews with the industry's finest. Until then, stay safe and keep on ticking.